So as I look at the rest of the French League, right, as I was saying to you before where we're coming on, right, I'm a little bit up to speed with a little bit of what's been going on at Nice and Rennes over the last couple of years, right? Rennes are sitting in third now, and Rennes like have really taken this like French academy manufacturing elite talent to the extreme. You know, like we've seen all sorts of ungodly talent come out there over the last like 2 or 3 years, and even though they keep selling, you know, like Rutter went off to the Bundesliga in the summer, Camavinga to Real Madrid. The list goes on. You know, they've had lots of them. You know, Ousmane Dembele. They're still third, and they've still got another crop, and maybe another two crops of these players coming through. Will they, you know, Rennes have been kind of in and out of European football for the last like 5 years, a wee bit of Europa League here and there or whatever. How good is the current squad, do you think, the current situation that Rennes are in? Is this the best they've been, or is this, what's your kind of stance on Rennes at the moment?
It's interesting. I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, Baptiste, who was on the pod. He's
Ah,
known on Twitter as Le Classic Pod, and we talk about Rennes and we talk about where they are now and how they came up there. So 3 years ago they win the Coupe de France. It's the first title in
yep,
decades with Julien Stéphan as the coach. And Julien Stéphan's story was he used to be the coach in the youth, so he got those guys up, and then he goes and he's the coach of the first team, and so naturally he's able to play the youth because he's coached them before. They know him, he knows them. And so it kind of looked like this is what should happen, and it happens, and the results come. But it's players that have played for it with each other for the past 6-7 years. So people who know football, that this most likely will work because those players know each other. There's smart experience added to it. I'm talking about Steven and Zonzi.
if you could hit the subscribe button, I do daily global football content, everything from Wonder Kids and Rising Star Managers to fantasy football and watch alongs. That will also automatically enter you into my April giveaway. This month, I'm giving away a 1 of 100 Belgium Youth International, Ewood Pletench, and 2 limited goalkeepers. If you want to stick around to the end of the video, we'll get into all the giveaway stuff again there.
Who's an
Yeah,
international and who was here to kind of like cement all this. Da Silva in defense. So it looked like a well-rounded team that was hitting its peak when they qualified for the Champions League for the first time in their history. And then last year, halfway through the year, the results don't come, and Julien Stéphan resigns because he loves the club and he doesn't want to basically be fired eventually. But there was a bit of a change in the Rennes mentality where it was the minnows who are making it, and all of a sudden he was like, "Wait, we can't hide anymore." The owner of Rennes is, if I'm not mistaken, he's the richest French businessman ever. His name is
nice.
François Pinault. So there's a lot of money behind the club, even though he's not investing everything he has in the club. He's definitely investing a little bit. Everyone knows Duku and Sulemana, and they are spending a bit
Yep.
of money to try and get the right players. But the expectations started growing, and then they get Florian Maurice as a sporting director, who used to be the Lyon sporting director, so somebody who knows what it takes to build an academy, to play with an academy. And then on the off season, they get Bruno Genesio as the coach. Actually, just before the end of last season, I should say, former Lyon guy as well, and a guy who used to coach. Sorry, when Maurice was the sporting director of Lyon. So that connection comes back in. A lot of skepticism at first. The season doesn't start very well for Rennes, but then what Genesio did was actually keep working on what Stefan had built and sort of I guess, for lack of a better word, took off the shackles. Kind of, said, it's free flowing football. Let's just attack, 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 and I'm sure we'll find something. The best, their biggest transfer was this defender from Lens, Loic Badet, who comes for, if I'm not mistaken, 17 million euro. And then after a couple of games, he gets injured, and then we see another youngster coming out, Warmed Omari, who's been fantastic since the beginning of the season, but that's his first ever season in Ligue 1. So, coming back to your comments, that academy, that Rennes Academy, who's the second academy in Europe right now, 3 years
Wow.
in a row, something like that. It's been rated the second in Europe. Has got another player out, and they are building on this. Assignon, the right back, coming back from the academy as well. But what was, I think, the biggest surprise was players like Bourigeaud. People who play Sorare would know
Yeah.
the result that Bourigeaud's getting. Flaviente in the midfield, Jonas Martin, who's at the end of his contract and who's 30-something years old. And all those players really getting along when it matters and really playing great football. I mean, Bourigeaud is being compared to Beckham the whole season. because of his fantastic assist and his cross and everything is just perfect. So it's just a team that is working well. At first, Laborde was the most prolific goal scorer in Ligue 1 for maybe the first half of the season, and then he's just hitting a bit of a slope right now. But everybody else is scoring the goals, so that works well for Rennes. And they are this season, without a doubt, the team who's playing the best football in France. The question is, how many of those players are they keeping after the summer? Most likely, their best defender, Naïef Haguerd, who's a Moroccan international, will be
Yep.
gone. Some of the youth that left back, there's Berger Milling, the Norwegian, but then there's Adrien
Big fan of
Truffert.
him.
Yeah, Milling's a great player. And then there's Truffert, who's only 19. I don't know if he can stay there. And so then now you look at the squad and you're wondering who's staying, who's leaving. But actually, a lot of players are probably this good because they've been in Rennes for a long time. Bourigeaud, it's 3, 4, or 5 years even. Tay, it's 4 or 5 years. Um, Amari Traoré, the captain, it's 4 or 5 years already. And so everybody has been here for a while. So all of a sudden, the conversion went from they're the best team in Ligue 1 to wait, but are they Lille from last season?
Yeah.
From this season, like they're just overperforming. They're a group that lives well together, and that's where the results are coming. And maybe they're just hitting peak right now, and then will come the off season, and they come back, and they're all going to be, on that cloud of we were the best team last year, and it's going to be hard to repeat
Keep
the
going.
same effort. I personally
Sure.
think that it's not them hitting peak because there's Sulemana, Jeremy Doku that have been very quiet this year and that are
Yeah.
going to be able to ignite this competition next year, excuse me. But it is a question that is raised in France right now. Is it the best they'll be, or is it really a dynasty that is slowly enabling himself to actually live and dominate Liga?
Yeah. Because it's very interesting to look at. Like, thinking about Bourigeaud, like when I look at that midfield, Bourigeaud, Santa Maria, and Flavian Tate, like those guys, like I've been at least partially aware of all three of them for the last like 3 or 4 years because they've been like decent. That Bourigeaud and Tate especially have been good, like 6 out of 10 guys for about 2 or 3 years. They're okay, but it really does feel that this kind of flair that they've got with all the youth players coming through, like. And again, it's really interesting that you bring up that Leon connection. I was not aware of any of that. But see, when he was coming through at Leon, I was a big fan of Martin Terrier, and he's been doing really well for Rennes, and he's somebody at Leon was well overlooked compared to the other players they had coming
Mm-hmm.
through at the time. And 29 appearances this season, 17 goals. And because he's 25, he will be slept on by a lot of people because he's not under 23. But he's he's a fun guy to watch, Martin Terrier, isn't he?
He's very good, and you're right. He was overlooked at Lyon, and when Lyon they sell him to, I think he went to Schalke before he went
Yeah,
to
it was
to
like
Rennes.
Germany or something, wasn't it? I'm
Yeah,
going to
yeah. I
check.
think it was Schalke, and I think it was something like 12 or 12.5 million. And Le
Oh
Lyon.
no, do you know who we're thinking about? Is Toussaint.
Oh, we are thinking about Toussaint. You're
We're
right.
thinking about Toussaint because
That's true.
Terrier went from Lyon to Rennes
To
just
Rennes straight
like
away.
2 seasons ago. But we're thinking about Toussaint because he went to Berlin.
That's true. He went to Hertha. But I think those two players were, I guess,
Similar.
considered the same in Lyon. It was like, oh yeah, another youth player. He's no Benzema. He's no Ben Arfa. Let's make the money out of it, right? Let's get him out. And then the first season in Rennes, Terrier plays well, but a bit of injury and not quite the confidence from Stefan and the season where Doku really explodes. He
Yep.
just didn't see as much game time. But then this season, the way they play together, Terrier, Laborde, Bourigeaud, is just magnificent to watch. To be honest, Gaëtan Laborde is one of my favorite striker in Ligue 1 for the past 4 or 5 years because he's the striker. He's the most selfless striker I've ever seen playing in Ligue 1, period. He's the kind of striker,
Okay.
he reminds me of Cavani. Whenever
Yeah.
there's a ball somewhere to go and chase, he's going to be chasing it. If it takes a 50-meter sprint to go and chase it, he will do it. He can score, he can cross like I've never seen a striker being able to cross like this. And he's not here to score the goals, and yet he's going to score 15 goals a season. He's here to make everybody else play well, and he doesn't have that ego of somebody who score 15 goals season in, season out. So I think Laborde really is making Terrier better, really is making Bourigeaud better. And yeah, he's that kind of that piece in the middle that makes the cog, run the right way.
Of course. And the last one I'll come back to before there's a nice little segue there between Leon discarded players. We'll come back to in a second, right? But I've also had somebody compare Adrian Truffet, if that's how you say his name, the left back Truffet, to Theo Hernandez. Similar player, would you say?
Yeah, maybe Theo Hernandez maybe is a little bit rougher than what Truffert is, but Truffert is very young. It's his second season in Liga, and we've seen an excellent left foot, can score, can cross, can take set pieces, confident. Defensively, not as strong and as crazy in a way as Theo Hernandez might be.
Fair enough. So yeah, coming back to Leon discarded players, the other team that again might not be a household name to many that occupies the top positions in the league is Nice. And when you think about discarded Leon players over the last couple of years, there's only one man that really puts egg all over Juninho Pernambucano's face, and that is Amin Gouiri, who, for me, the guy is like the most slept on player in European football. He's been electric since he's showed up at Nice. Our Nice, I know I'm a big fan of Gaultier after last season with Lille. I think he was a huge part of the reason they won the league. But as Nice, if Gouiri leaves Nice, how much of this team goes down a level, do you think?
I don't think they do go down a level even if Gouiri leaves.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think he's an excellent player, and I think he's probably one of the best player in Nice. But if one thing Galtier does well is that his team is a team, and there are some very good talent and very good individual skills in there. But his team is a team. Gouiri has been excellent the first 4 or 5 months, and as soon as Gouiri had a couple of games who is not too great, then Justin Kluivert came to a completely other level when they play against Marseille. Kluivert just killed Marseille almost by himself. And before that, we didn't see Kluivert at all. Whenever he was playing, he was ghostly, and all of a sudden he woke up and he did it. Then Kluivert is so-so, and then Calvin Stengs comes and actually performs, and then Delors comes and performs. That's what Galtier does. It's also an interesting segue because those two teams were playing against each other this weekend, Nice and Rennes. And Galtier used to be an assistant coach in Lyon, probably 10 or 15 years ago now. Before he left, if I'm not mistaken, either for Italy or for China to coach, because he had an issue when he came to Marseille. He had a bit of a fight in the corridor. He has a temper. Galtier, he's from Marseille originally, so when he came home, it was a bit hard. But yeah, Galtier and Genesio, before that game between Nice and Rennes, had a like half an hour or 45 minutes chat, just the two of them on the bench. I mean, I love to hear what they say. They're probably two of the best coaches that we have in France right now, and they really respect each other, and they really talk about football and live football differently, because Genesio wants great football, Galtier wants wins, no matter the football he plays. And so he's a very pragmatic coach. He knows that to win, his team needs to have either the best attack or the best defense. It's definitely easier to get the best defense than the best attack, because it's just a matter of always do the work. And that's what he did last year in Lille. That's what he's doing this year with Nice. Nice is the best defense in the league. Walter Benitez, the goalkeeper, who is half Argentinian, half French, now has the French passport. And all of a sudden, everybody is pushing for him to be called by Didier Deschamps to go to the World Cup as the third keeper, because he's been so exceptional with Nice. So that's what Galtier has built. Last year Nice was criticized, and Patrick Vieira was fired because they couldn't get the results, but they lost their best player, Dante, the Brazilian defender who's 36 years old, early in the season to an ACL injury. And then he comes back this year, and Galtier knows the importance of Dance the same way Galtier knew the importance of José Font when he was at Lille, who's a defender that you can rely on, who's your man on the pitch, who's going to relay your directives and your guidance. And so he uses him a lot, and he used him to cement the defense. Todibo next to him has been excellent. Daniel Luc, who's not been great, really find himself a bit of a second breath with Dance next to him. And then in front of him, Lemina and Rosario brought the impact that Galtier likes into the midfield. And so that's what Galtier really did. He cemented his team defensively. And then in front, you have Dolberg, Gouiri, Delors, Stengs, Kluivert. Do you know what I mean? All this firepower. So Guiri
Yeah.
was great at the beginning of the season because no one expected Nice to play defensively again. They thought Galtier was going to make them play a bit higher, but they play defensively, and Guiri on the transition is one of the best players that we have in Ligue 1 right now. So he really shone, and he really showcased his dribble ability, his pace, his finishing. I think he's not that good the last couple of months, or so I should say he's just probably hitting a bit of a hard slope. But the rest of the squad is picking up, and yeah, like I said, I think Guiri probably will leave Nice, or at least will attract a lot of offers during the summer.
Yeah, I would
If
agree.
he goes, I think the talent is behind. Nice is also a team that now has completely different ambitions than 2 3 years ago because they've been bought by Ineos and the Radcliffe brothers, and so there's a lot of
Yeah.
money behind the team. There's a new stadium that was built just before the Euro, so the ambition is there. Galtier came in. If Nice doesn't qualify for the Champions League, there's going to be a bit of a perfume of failure for Nice. If Rennes doesn't qualify, it's okay. But
Yeah.
Nice is also about to play the French Cup final against Monaco. So if they win the Coupe de France, then this season will already be a success, and Galtier would have done what a few coach have done in France. Taken Saint Etienne, bring them to the top. Take Lille, bring them to the top. Take Nice, bring them to the top.
Yeah.
He's an impressive coach.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching Lille last year as much as like actually this year Lille have been an absolute car crash. But Gaultier is like, and again, if anyone hasn't watched this guy, like he's a proper like old school manager on the touchline. You really do feel that this guy has the command of the club. Where he really does call the shots on every front. And whereas some managers you get more of a vibe that they're like the head coach, they're just pulling the strings and orchestrating everything. Whereas this guy, you get that kind of Godfather vibe from him. I don't know if it's the haircut and the beard and all that, but he's
It's
definitely a
funny.
much.
I'm interrupting you. Sorry. It's funny
No, no.
because you're completely right that he had that vibe. Yet
Yeah.
every single press conference where he's asked about transfer, his answer is always, "I'm the head coach. I don't look at the transfers. The
Yeah.
sporting director brings player. My job is to just make them play." He
Yeah.
always says that he doesn't look at anything else than just the pitch, and he lets the president and the sporting director bring the player. He was saying that when he was working with Luis Campos at Lille. Yet you're completely right. I'm
That's
sure
the
that
kind of vibe.
he's the one who leads the club, 100%.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be surprised maybe with Leo because they do feel like a transfer committee kind of team because they are all about buying low and selling high. So I can kind of get that they'll probably have a department, but he is this big imposing guy, and it's like, I remember watching a good bit of Lille last year. So many of Lille's 3 points came in the last 5 minutes of the game. Burak Yilmaz, Yazici, Joe David, these kind of guys. And, watching teams getting last minute winners on the way to a title run, that's when you see emotions on the bench and he just poured it out. And I love to see that from folk. So Nice, yeah, and that's one thing I've been kind of looking at with Nice over the last couple of years is when they have had this big injection of money. I think the guy's British, the guy who owns him, or maybe he's English or
Yeah.
something. But they're not going OTT. They're not doing Paris Saint Germain. They want to do it a wee bit more organically, and fair play to them. The last player I'd want to touch on, Nice, who has caught my eye, who's somebody who was highly tipped for big things maybe about 2 seasons ago. I know he's had an injury and whatever, but he's not really returned any sort of status thus far. And that's Yusuf Attal, the right back. What's the situation with him? Is he done, or is he injured still? What's the script with him?
Very injury prone, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Uh, a singular talent, like a little pocket rocket on the right side, very quick, not scared of anyone. He's not the tallest player,
yeah,
but he doesn't have any issues playing hard against any player. Can dribble literally anyone. Can score from his right, from his left foot. He's not afraid of jumping and going, challenging for headers. Just a lot of injuries, unfortunately. With the way Galtier plays, it's not quite what Atal needs. Atal kind of needs a 3-5-2 when he's the right winger. And
yep,
Galtier likes his 4-4-2 and doesn't want to move from it. So you're almost locking up Atal when you put a right midfielder in front of him. But what Galtier did very well is whenever he played that way, he finds somebody as a right midfielder who is somebody who likes to play in the half spaces, exactly
yeah,
like Calvin Stengs or like Kluivert, who won't necessarily stay completely on the wing, but will happily, take the half space so that Atal can have the whole wing to himself. He can go, 90 minutes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The injury is definitely an issue for Atal. He got injured twice, I think, against this year. And if he can fix that, and Nice is really known to have a good health medical department. If he can get over that hump and get healthy, whatever the reason is for his injuries, I think he still has the potential of having proper good career in Ligue 1, or even it's somebody that you can see shining
Yeah.
in Premier League with no problem.
Yeah, because I say he popped onto the scene a few years ago, and everybody was like, "Oh, this guy's going to be incredible." And when I seen his name, I'd totally forgotten about him because he's not got a so rare card. But when I seen his name there, I was like, "Oh, Atal, what's he up to?" But yeah, no, his first season at Nice. I was just looking at the statistics there. 29 games in the league, 6 goals from right back, and the assists aren't there, but I'm sure he's got assists that year. But then since then, he's not made more than 18 appearances in the league in the last 3 seasons. So that is a bit of a shame. Probably the team I was the most excited to come and talk to you about today, Jeremy, is Strasbourg, right? So me and you were chatting last week about Ousmane Dembele and stuff like that, and I was saying to you, Jeremy, you need to clue me up on Strasbourg. I'd seen some tweets and some pages or whatever. I can't remember where it was, but they were telling me that the managerial situation and all the infrastructure stuff that's happening at Strasbourg is the kind of thing that would float my boat. And I said that to you. Your eyes lit up. You're like, yes, I can dig it. Let's do it. And so here we find ourselves. I'm just going to look at the last result they've got, and then you can tell me what it is I need to fall in love with Strasbourg. But they beat Lens 1-0 at the weekend, I beg your pardon. And it was a goal from a jerk. I've never heard of him before. And a missed penalty from Kevin Gamiero. If that's how you say his name. I can't believe he's still playing football. So Strasbourg they're sitting in 4th. Yep. And, they're right in amongst it for European football for next year. So Strasbourg, what's the big fuss?
So without saying a whole book, back to the bit of a history. Strasbourg is where Kevin Gamero started 15 years ago now. Yeah,
okay.
he's back to his club. That's why he's back in France, so he can go back to where he started. And so it used to be that club that was 10th place. Sometimes they could go up. Mamadou Niang, Michael Pagis, Vencel as the goalkeeper. So some good talents that then have exploded somewhere else. Money issues, they get relegated to 4th division. And then Mark Keller, who used to be a Strasbourg player before he played in Premier League, comes back and is the sporting director of Strasbourg back when they have to go into bankruptcy. And he's decided to take the club over with the help of actually with fans, really trying to back him up and trying to put the club back on. So the club rebuilt itself slowly, and then 3rd division, 2nd division, back in 1st division 5 years ago. And I think the one piece of business that Keller did fantastically well is he found this new sporting director that is still unknown today, but will make waves if he keep doing like this. His name is Loïc Désiré, a young sporting director of the that sort of young new wave of sporting director, not somebody who was a known former professional player or coach or whatever.
More of a Monchi than a Van der Sar.
Exactly. Data analytics, basing himself on not only this, also meeting people, but doing healthy business and trying to find the right people for your club, not just players just because they're good players, but players that will fit what the club is trying to do. And so very smartly, at first, they found a coach that was a very good coach, but rigorous defensive. His name was Thierry Lauré.
That's what I was going to say. Like the only kind of thing I've got on Strasbourg's recent kind of history is I remember looking at them a few years ago when I used to do some other football activities, and I often described them. I don't remember what season it was, but I often described them as the French Burnley at the time. Like they were really like I can't remember what season it was, but there was a season where they were like 0-0, 1-0. They did not concede goals. Yeah,
just before COVID.
Oh, was that when it was? Yeah, so it wasn't that
just
long
before
ago.
COVID. The season before COVID and end to the COVID season, to the 2019-2020, I think they go on a run of something like 1 loss at home in 40 games or something like this. Like Lameno, who is their stadium, was said to be this fortress that no one can take. Paris couldn't even score at Lameno. So it was this coach, Thierry Lauré, who did this. And then same thing, people started having ambitions for Strasbourg. Strasbourg became a club that can definitely become 10th or 9th or 8th in Ligue 1. But a coach like Thierry Lauré, who's very defensive, wasn't quite cutting it. Last year was the year too many. They played without any fans, so it was harder to keep that fortress. They started losing some games at home,
Of
and then
course.
Lore got the sack, and then they brought in Julien Stéphan, we were talking about, the
From Rennes.
coach at Rennes that made Rennes where it was. It was a surprise in France because everyone thought it was a bit of, maybe a step back for Julien Stéphan to go to Strasbourg, very much like it looked like a step back for Galtier to go to Nice, because it feels like those coaches were about to explode, like Rudy Garcia did 10 years ago,
Yeah.
find their adventure overseas, and yet they go for a club that is technically not as good as the club that they just left. But they go for the project, and so Julien Stéphan went to Strasbourg because Keller and Loic Desiré told him, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we want to do it, and we're a healthy club, and we're going to bring the players that you want, and we're going to play the way that you want, and you're going to be able to put something in place for the first team, but also the reserve and the under 18 and the under 16, and really build what you want to build. And so obviously it's very attractive for Julien Stéphan because he's that kind of coach. And he's been very good since he joined. It's funny that you say that you never heard about Ludovic Ajorc because I think every single Premier League team is going to jump on him
Oh,
at
really?
the off season. He's the best header of the ball that we have in Ligue 1. He's a meter 99, I think,
Oh, wow.
and yet he's an extraordinary player, ball to fit. He's the kind of striker that, although he's very tall and very good with his head, has an above average technique. He's very good at making his teammates play as well. Gets along
Nice.
fantastically with Gamero or with Habib Diallo when Diallo plays. Another player that is doing really well at Strasbourg right now is Thomasson. It's spelled Thomasson, but it's
Adrian.
Thomasson,
Yeah.
and he's a great number 10, like the way people are aged. No number 10, the guy who he's not the strongest, he's not the tallest, but he's got that silky touch, and he's also got quite a bit of a temper, so he really doesn't mind the back tackles and the grinding and to come and get back the
Nice.
ball. And that's what Strasbourg is built on. What Julien Stéphan brought that maybe Strasbourg didn't have is that keen eye for the young talent. And so next thing you know, you have a guy like Alexander Djiku, who was always a good defender, but not a leader of defense. Well, he puts him in a back three with two players that are very young. Loic Perrin, who didn't quite cut it at Marseille, goes to
Yeah.
Strasbourg and has a very good first part of season. And Niamzi, Jerzy Niamzi, who comes from Rennes, who was coached by Julien Stéphan in his
Ah,
youth at the academy. And then Julien Stéphan goes to Strasbourg and brings him back straight away.
nice.
Although at Rennes, he wasn't playing him eventually. But then
Okay.
when he goes to Strasbourg and he sees what's going on, he brings him over. And that's the smarts of Stefan, where he was like, at Rennes, it's not exactly what I need, but in Strasbourg, in a back three, he's the player that I want. Because he adapted his tactic. 4-4-2 didn't work at the beginning. 3-5-2 actually worked really well. There's a player on loan from Aston Villa, Gilbert, on one wing, who's having a bit of a bit of a rebirth in Ligue 1. And on the left side, you got a guy called Dimitri Liena, who has only known Ligue 1 at 30 years old, and he's 33 now, and he's got the armband every other game. So it's a very good story. Again, that's a bit of a story of maybe a team that has hit its peak, and
Yep.
and it looks like Ajorc is going. It looks like Thomasson is going. I'm not sure how long Jiku is staying. Even the the goalkeeper, excuse me, Matt Sales,
Yep.
the Belgian, he's a very good keeper. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep him. So I have a bit more doubt for Strasbourg for next year because the academy is not at the level of Rennes yet. The money isn't the money that Nice has,
Yeah.
and it looks like they're going to have to find new young talent. But now people in France know that if Julien Stéphan says I want this player, then everybody's
Uh
going to
huh.
come and pay a bit more money to be able to get him. So
Sure.
they're going to have to do their business quietly.
Quietly.
But one of the best attack in the league, one of the best defense in the league.
So
Recipe for success, right?
So yeah, all that puts a massive smile on my face. I can definitely get behind that manager, and I think I'll be looking into that sporting director guy. As he sounds very interesting. When I started looking over the squad, like in preparation for this today, like Habib Diallo is somebody I was familiar with when he was at Metz because he took like 15 penalties one year and got like 25 goals in the season or something, and he's 9 goals in 24 games, mainly from the bench this year. Another guy that grabbed headlines earlier this year from some of the statistic pages on Twitter and whatever is Ibrahima Sissoko in centre mid. Him and Adrian Thomason, when I was looking at all this from a Sorare perspective, they're the only cards. Them and Anthony Catchy are the only ones that really sprung up to me. And I'm actually mildly embarrassed I never found this a Jork guy, because he does look the part.
He's a special
I think
guy.
I just looked at his age and did the. I'm really sorry, but I think that's just what I done. But he's a number 7 striker, so I can get behind that kind of thing. But and again, when you were talking about fullbacks, I'm surprised you never mentioned Catchy. Is he not in fullback anymore, or what's the script for him?
Well, he's actually, and Sorare player will realize that it's actually the right time to get him now, because he was a bit falling out of favor. It was Gilbert on one side and Lienard on the other, and it was Perrin in defense. But now Kachi is actually taking that right centre back role, not necessarily on the wing anymore, but he's the right centre back for the past 3-4 games, and I think he's going to stay there because he's actually performed quite well. And this weekend again against Lens, he did really good. So yeah, just drop back a little from the position that he used to have. But Strasbourg is the team that is keen to get clean sheets. So Kachi would be a good buy right now.
Yeah, definitely agree. I'm having a look at the scores. So I think the only problem with Catchy is he has just turned 24. Unfortunately, it says he's out of contract in the summer.
Oh, is he? Oh, see, I didn't know that.
It says on Sorare data, so I don't know how accurate their contract details are. But yeah, so I know you were saying that you reckon Strasbourg might be operating at the very top of their output at the moment, and if they do lose some players, it's likely you'll see some regression from them next year. If they were to qualify for Europe, right? So obviously just finishing 4th or 5th is only half the battle. You still need to do qualification processes and that kind of thing next season. If they were to qualify for Europe, because again, I'm pretty sure, did they maybe get to a cup final a while ago? Were they maybe in Europe
They
like
did.
4 years? Yeah, something like that rings a little bell for me. Sorry. Do you reckon they would have a better chance of keeping a hold of like Thomasson or a Jork if they qualified for Europe? Is that possible, or do you think that they'll just want to go?
Thomasson is a maybe.
Yeah.
Because I think he likes Strasbourg, and I think he's been good, but he's not been consistently exceptional. He's been a good, grifty, kind of like a solid midfielder within the Strasbourg squad. He hasn't completely outshone everybody. But that said, a player like this was Romain Fèvre in Brest, and Milan wanted him, and then he went to Lyon. So there's definitely still demand for that kind of player. But Thomasson maybe will stay. Ajorc would be so surprised if he doesn't get a 25 million offer in the summer. He's the kind of player that is very reminds us in France of Giroud when Giroud left Montpellier, of a player like Drogba when Drogba left Marseille. It looks like sky is the limit, and it looks like even though he's already 27 or 28, he's just going to get better with age, and he already is getting better using his brain more than his body, and it's obvious when he plays. I think he's going to be outstanding for the next 2-3 years. So I wouldn't be surprised if he goes somewhere else. Thomasson maybe would stay. That said, if Ajorc leaves, you have Gamero and you have Habib Diallo, and Diallo doesn't have a lot of game time right now because Ajorc has been that good. So it doesn't mean necessarily that Strasbourg is not going to perform. It's just it just will look like there's going to have to be a bit of a rebuild ascending phase, which can work well, but it's not something that we've seen from Julien Stéphan. We haven't seen him performing well under that kind of pressure and demand.
Sure.
Strasbourg is not Rennes, so he could do it there.
Yeah, fair enough. I think the goalkeeper will be a big part of that, because having a top end goalkeeper allows a decent team to push top 5, top 6. But and you only need to look at how good Ream were doing earlier this year with Rakovic. A top goalkeeper that can pull you out of sticky situations. Like, they are the hardest to replace in a lot of cases, because Matt Sells is like around the 30 mark. I think he's not young. So he goes. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts definitely to consider. What I would ask you, probably the last thing on the squad, because I'm sure we'll be talking more Strasbourg, because I say I'm quite interested in this kind of thing. Habib Diallo, I've never actually watched him play. See, I was just more kind of statistical when I used to see him at Metz, in terms of the goals he was scoring and whatever, penalty taking and that. Is he actually a good forward, Habib Diallo,
He's
for a team like
a
Strasbourg?
he's a poacher.
A
He's
poacher.
he's the player who, although he has the ability to make the runs and can play in transition, he's actually a proper we call it fox in the box.
Yeah.
In France, it's same thing in English. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's his play. He is always there to score the goal. Whatever happened, there's a leg, there's a head. He's
Yeah.
going to do it. He's a good football player, but what really made him known in Metz is that he was always there when it mattered to be able to score the goals. In Strasbourg, he's been asked to actually play within the team, and he hasn't quite done it as well as everybody else, which is why he's only playing a few minutes every game. But that's because he's been asked to adapt to a squad that's better than Metz. Metz was a little bit of a kicking rush team when
Yep.
when Jallo was playing there, and now here he's in a team that is challenging for the best position. He still scored his fair share of goals, and he's showing how good he can be. But I think the adaptation has been a bit complicated at first. When he joined Strasbourg, there was a lot of issues because Strasbourg and Metz are rivals. They're only
Oh,
40
really?
kilometers away from each other. That I think Jallo is
Ooh.
probably, I think it's the only player who's done Metz to Strasbourg in like 2 decades, maybe. Like
Wow.
it was a
So,
really, really big deal for Metz fans because they knew anyone wanted Jallo in England, and
yeah.
Metz couldn't quite sell him, and they took 10 million from Strasbourg, and they copped it a lot from their fans for selling it to the rival. And that actually affected Jallo because I think one of his
Yeah.
conversation was leaked on Twitter, of like him saying something like, I'm going to Strasbourg because they send me there, but I don't want to go there. And
Yeah.
then sort of like laughing, he says that, and then a minute after he laughs at the Metz fans for complaining. And so
Yeah.
he was affected by it. He said it, and so it took him a while to actually get to adjust to Strasbourg. And then when he adjusted, Ajorc and Gamero just started piling up on the goals. So I'm sure he'll find his skills again, his goals again. He just had that adaptation moment.
Yeah, I see. I was just curious because I was always worried that he might have been propped up by penalties, because I know he took all the penalties for Metz, and I think that year they just scraped away. Do you know? Last little thing we'll kind of leave this on, just because I've got Metz in my head now. That year they had another guy who was touted for big things. I want to say his name was Ibrahim Nian.
Ibrahim Anyan
Ibrahim. Yeah, is he? Do you know where he's at? I don't know if I don't know if I leave this in, but I'm just curious.
scored 6 goals in 3 games at the beginning of last year, and yeah, was started for big things. Then I think it's his ACL or MCL that cuts his season short,
Oh,
and then this year, been in and out between him and Opa and Get, and I think it's Mark Targay, the other one who plays up front for Metz. They just haven't been consistently performing, and a coach like Frédéric Antonetti, who when the team doesn't play well, goes defensive and defensive and defensive and defensive, isn't helping him. Definitely not confirm what we've seen. Still a player that I think in the right squad could score quite a few goals.
sorry. Excellent. Well, Jeremy, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Thanks a lot for joining us, and I look forward to having you back next time so we can go through maybe some more results or go through some up and coming stuff. The plan is to get me as clued up as possible for Liga and for like now and going forward, and hopefully you guys at home are going to benefit from that as well. If you do actually have any like French specific questions for Jeremy, obviously be sure to drop it in the comment section. We can pick them up in future videos as well. Jeremy, I keep twisting my tongue on your name. Sorry, pal. Jeremy
It's okay.
also hosts the Breaking the Lines podcast as well, so make sure you check that out. It's available on all the podcast places. It'll be linked in the description down below, where to find Jeremy on Twitter, as well as the podcast and all that good stuff. Thanks a lot, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me. It's
Thank you.
always great to be on your podcast, man.
Buzzing. Let's get into all the giveaway stuff before I let you go. I'm still doing monthly giveaways and I'm making it easier to enter. If you want to be entered to win this month's prize or any future giveaways here at the channel, all the same rules will always apply. Hit the subscribe button, you need to be a subscriber to enter, then leave a comment down below. Each month, a random comment from a random video will be selected as the winner, so the more videos you leave a comment on, the better the chance you've got of winning any of my giveaways. All the winners are announced at the end of videos the same way as we're doing here. The best way to keep up with the content has always been to hit the notification bell with all notifications turned on. As always guys, if you've enjoyed the video today, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button. On screen now is some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Stay out of trouble, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye bye.